Hi, I'm going to talk you through the latest version of our RPA form, so-called because we use it for robotic process automation, in that a lot of our systems can actually read the data directly off these forms. We developed this so that the data that comes to us is in the kind of format and content and reliable content that's required to perform customs formalities. So a lot of people are already familiar with RPA. It's been used an awful lot. What we've done now is just upgraded it and brought in new concepts and what have you, now that we've got 3 months of kind of use under our belt. So there are two versions. There's the logistics version, which is this one I'm going to start with, and there's also a trader version, which is very, very similar, although the trader version allows traders to create their product library in advance and then just retrieve that library. But I'll explain those pieces, those differences at the end of this short presentation. So the basics are pretty much the same. You can profile your team. You have the NINOR section, which is the consignees, consignors. You've got an area to create a new load, to give us transaction details about a goods on the move. And there's also the ability to create a pro forma invoice because we've gathered the same type of information that would normally be on an invoice, so we may as well create one off the back of it if so required. The RPA is for full customs declarations. If by any chance you only require an ENS, a safety and security declaration, then we would advise you to go to our dedicated web page for that purpose, which is contained on the RPA. The RPA is a little bit overkill, really, for the level of information that's required just for a safety and security declaration. So we created a web page for that purpose. Should you require it, the link is shown. So first of all, profiling the team. It is what it says on the tin, really. You create your company name, say ABC Logistics Limited, and your team you then create down here with out of hours numbers if you want to share those with us, so that if there are any issues, we can get in touch with you. We're open 24 hours a day, and rather than have something stuck at the border, you might want us to actually call you if there is a problem. If so, just include your details here. NINOR, let's go to NINOR. This is the consignee and consignor information. This is so that you don't have to enter this information every time. And a lot of logistics companies save these Excels as templates, as do traders, so that you're actually kind of creating your own offline templates to send to us when you have load data on the go. So here we've created one called NewCo. The company name is NewCo, believe it or not. The short code is whatever you want to call it. That's how you'll retrieve the record later on. We call the company NewCo and we put in a fictitious GB EORI number. There are then two links here where you can actually click off to validate the EORI number either directly on the EU site or on the GB EORI validation site. Of course, prior to Brexit, they were just one link. Now GB EORIs do not appear on the EU site, therefore there are two different links. So if you have a GB EORI, click the right-hand one, and if you have an EU EORI, including an XI EORI, click the left-hand one, and it will tell you whether or not that EORI is valid. Nothing's really changed there, apart from we've added the GB validation because you can't look at GB EORI numbers on the EU site anymore. However, to the right of that, we've also included now information to record the TAN or DDA or duty deferment account number of the trader. And on there's a footnote number 1 here, which is on the right hand side. So in order for the declaring agent to be allowed to use that, then we have to be authorized. And for GB, you click here, and for Ireland, you click here. It used to be known as AEP 5. It's not so much now, but people still refer to it as AEP 5. You then say whether or not you or we are authorized, depending on who the declarant will be on the entry. We also ask for the company registration number of the company listed and the country of registration. That's quite a new development for us, and the reason why we're asking that is so that we can decide whether or not we will be representing this importer as a direct representative or an indirect representative. If the importer is not legally established in the country where the import declaration is being made, then the agent acts as an indirect rep for that importer, and therefore it's important to have that visibility. So we have whatever short code you want to use, the company name and the company EORI number. Validate those before you load, or as you load them, so that you know that the data in here is good data, because you've been onto the websites and clicked them, and these will lead you directly to the EORI websites. If they have a deferment account or a TAN account, as it's known in Ireland, put the details, put whether or not We as the declarant, or you as the declarant, depending, are authorized to use that on a customs entry and then put the company registration number and the country of registration, which we've stuck with Europe on these, so that we can then decide whether or not the company has a legal entity in the country that prefixes the EORI number. Whew, hope that makes sense. That's the NINORs done. Not major changes, but the very important changes on the right-hand side there, and some text for you to absorb as you go through. New load. Now that's changed quite a lot. We used to have an order. We used to have a section in the middle here that described what processes were required, and then an order form that said what processes we would complete based on your answers. What we've done is actually mash that into one now, so that the order form appears in the center of the main screen. So as usual, it's the yellow fields that you're interested in, and we put some information in beforehand just to sort of kick things off. So here you've retrieved your user from your team profile. Here I've chosen myself because it's easier. The type of movement is very, very important. So for here, we will do a fairly complicated one of a GB ROI. So we'll be completing a GB export and an import in the Republic of Ireland. So we'll go with that one. And you start to see things starting to populate over here. Is it a full load or a groupage? It's important for us to know whether or not it's a full load or a groupage, because if it's full load, we can pack and wrap the job in one go, i.e. issue PBNs, GVMS, and so on and so forth. If it's groupage, we can only deal with it at a consignment level, and we wait for the load list to confirm before we start issuing PBNs, what have you. So let's take this one as a full load. Shipping status, we need to know whether it will be shipped as accompanied or unaccompanied, because that affects the coding on the import entry and also the safety and security declaration. So in this particular example, we'll take it that the trailer is shipping driver accompanied. We filled the next pieces in just because it saves a bit of time. So we've got a truck and trailer number. We've got a seal number, which is not mandatory, but if you have the seal, then give it to us, because that information can be useful, particularly on the safety and security declaration, and also might be required to verify the details on the CHED if there is traces declaration required, if the products are of animal origin, for example. The country of dispatch, the pick list will only allow you to choose the countries depending on what you've put up here. So here we know it's from Great Britain, therefore you have to choose Great Britain, and we know it's going to Ireland, therefore you have to choose Ireland. We don't self-populate them, because if you're going to mainland Europe, of course, there are many, many choices of where you're going. Equally, the ports, only on the pick list, only the ports that actually service that route are available. So you're going to be leaving from one of these, and we will choose Holyhead, and you're going to be, I will choose Holyhead. We'll choose Holyhead, and you're going to be arriving, let's say, in Dublin. We don't require any transits. Over here, you'll see that 4 OKs, rather, not 3, 4 OKs have appeared, which means that that combination of coding is all good. If something was wrong, i.e. that you changed up here, well, let's just try it to prove a point. We'll do ROI to GB, and we'll find that everything's X'd out because it's the wrong way around. We'll go back to GB ROI, and you'll see the OKs appear again. So these sections are not required, otherwise they would have turned yellow rather than stayed grey. So we don't need a second exit or a second entry, and we don't need a transit document. Over here, you'll see transit 2 not generally required. We're also starting to populate the top here as well. My job ref is whatever job reference you want to use. The consignor short code is from the NINORs that you've already created in advance. So we've got a GB to ROI, so we'll have a GB test company, and the consignee or importer is going to IE. So up here, you can see these are starting to populate. We've now got a GB exporter and IE importer. We've got the EORI number of the exporter, the EORI number of the importer. We note here that the importer has a deferment account and that we're authorized to use it. So all good so far. You then have the invoice number, which is however it appears. There can be many of them, but this is the either the supplier's invoice on an import or the exporter's invoice on an export. Whatever, we just filled that in just to speed up. Invoice currency, we're not given an enormous list, but because basically in Europe they're pretty much standard currencies. So we'll choose GBP in this one for pounds sterling, and then we'll choose Incoterms. These are just abbreviations because most people are getting used to this now. So we'll choose DAP, delivered at place. There's a little bit of text just to explain what you've just chosen, just to be sure. And then over here, there's a comment box that comes up that describes what each of those Incoterms means in terms of how the process will be handled. We used to have that on the main screen, but it was taking up a lot of space, and people are getting more familiar with the processes now. So if you need that information, it's there available to you, but if you don't need it, don't click on the link. What you'll see in the middle now is this is now saying we're going to do an export declaration from Great Britain, an import declaration in Ireland. We're going to do a safety and security declaration for the port of arrival, which is Dublin. There's no need for a transit, so unless you tell us otherwise, we're not going to do a transit, because they're generally not required to the Republic of Ireland unless you're clearing inland. The exit port is Holyhead, and that will require a GVMS once that's been launched. The entry port is Dublin, so you will require a PBN. There are no second entry and exit and entry ports because there's no transit involved, and we don't yet know whether or not there's SPS goods because we haven't started to complete the goods section. Excuse me, the goods section. Now down here we've started to pop up some text messages just to help you. So you'll see there's an X to the left. If you enter a commodity code in here which is incorrect, let's do one that's incorrect first. The X will remain. So that commodity code is not known to us. I actually deliberately did it with one digit wrong, so we'll use one that it does like. We know that commodity code. We know that's that commodity code is valid. So the X has turned to a tick, meaning we're okay with that one. You'll see there's some text here explaining, which will help you as you go. The origin of the goods is not the same as the country of dispatch necessarily. So what origin are we having for these goods? We will say they're from GB. We'll put the goods description in as general goods. The number of packages, we'll have 5. This is a pick list so that the standardization, we'll have 5 cases. Gross weight 500 kilos, quite heavy cases. Net weight 400 kilos. Item value £1,000. And that's it. These next sections have remained grey, so they're not required. Okay. And over here, we've extended that we've now got 3 tariffs involved. There's the EU tariff known as TARIC. There's the GB tariff, which is the global tariff for imports into GB. And then there is the XI, or the tariff for imports for goods at risk into Northern Ireland. So with each of these, the hyperlink, you just click on the link. I won't do that because it will take us away from this screen, but you click on the link and it will go to the exact page for the commodity code that you've entered. Okay, so it doesn't just go to the tariff itself and then you've got to play around with it. It will go to the exact page for that commodity code. If the commodity code doesn't exist, it will still open the tariff, but it won't go to the exact page because there isn't one. Okay, but it's also another way of knowing that something's gone not quite according to plan. So here we've got 5 cases, 500 kilos, 400 kilos, £1,000. So up at the top now, that started to populate. Just as a summary, we've got 1,000, we've got 5 packages, we've got 1 commodity line, so on and so forth. We've got the truck details, the gross weight and the net weight. Let's add a slightly more complicated commodity code, 141000, which again is known to us. And we'll choose that one as being GB origin as well. This is MDF fiberboard, for example, and we'll have 6 loose. For the sake of nothing, and we'll have that as 300 kilos, 300 kilos, £1,200. The top is now starting to change. So we've now got 2 commodity lines and 11 packages of some description. And this one is lit up in that this commodity code requires a supplementary quantity, which over here is telling you that it's cubic meters. So we have to enter the cubic meters for this, which we'll say is 2 for the sake of argument. No other greys have lit up, so there's no need to put any more information. Okay, now we'll choose one that lights up more of the grey area. 0809 30. Actually, no, that's not the one I want to enter. I want to enter one with a Mersing code just to prove a point, really. So we'll go to 1806 1806201020. That commodity code is known. This is lighting up everywhere here. And we'll go for the origin as being GB again. And we'll have this as, I don't know, biscuits. Cases. You can always type case. You don't have to go for the, providing it is exactly as it appears in that list. Okay. 3 cases, 30 kilos. Oops, a daisy. Just to prove a point. 30 cases, sorry, 30 kilos, 28 kilos net, and 65 pounds. But now this is asking for a health certificate because these products are flashing up as SPS controls. Because there's a health certificate, there's a traces requirement, and this is starting to populate up here as well. Okay, so we require the export health certificate number. We require the MRCING code, unless this is an import into GB, which it isn't. So MRCING code is not required for GB imports. There are rumours that the EU will drop them, but for the time being they haven't. So we'll also require a MRCING code, which can be looked up by clicking here. This will take you directly to a website that will allow you to decide the MRCING code based on the sucrose, isoglucose content of the product. You have to answer basically 4 questions, and then you'll get the MRCING code back. And then here, because it's in the range of chapter 1 to 20, it's asking whether or not the goods are answered, or it's asking whether or not the goods are marketed or labeled or promoted as being organic. It's a very important aspect, this, because organic goods have the same commodity code as non-organic, but there are certain controls that we have to say whether or not the goods are subject to organic certification or not, and therefore we need to know whether or not the goods are marketed as organic. If we say, for example, that the goods are not organic, and during an examination of the goods by DAFM or DEFRA in the UK or DERA in Northern Ireland, that they find that the goods are marked as organic, then the entry is incorrect, and we have had before where those goods have had to be disposed of because there was no certification. Okay, so you have to answer. If it lights up in yellow, you have to answer. We'll say that these biscuits are not considered organic, and we're ready for the next item. Let's just prove one other point here. So we'll take the first item again, only this time, and again we'll have general goods. I want to come back to the origin in a minute. We'll do 5 cases again. 500 kilos, 400 kilos, exactly the same goods. Only now I'm going to say the origin is French, and again you don't have to put the exact, you don't have to go through the code, you don't have to go through the list, you can put whatever the country code is. This is now flashed up that there may be return goods relief, because the goods are coming from GB and are destined for the Republic of Ireland. They are not GB origin and therefore do not qualify for duty-free importation against the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. However, as the goods are originally from the EU and are essentially returning to the EU in the same state that they left, they may qualify for return goods relief. There's some text to explain that here. If you are applying for return goods relief, we need to have the MRN number of the original export declaration that took those goods, that had those goods coming out of the EU initially. So if, for example, the goods have come from France into GB distribution center, it's that MRN number that we require in order to then prove that the goods are now going to Ireland and they are the same goods that were originally shipped from the EU. Okay, so it's a very important aspect. If there's no export MRN, then we can't claim return goods relief. Okay, so we'll say here that it's impossible, and therefore those goods will become dutiable. Okay, without that MRN number over here. The center section here is telling you everything we're going to do. Because it flagged up that there was a health certificate required, we're also going to do a traces declaration. The only text in here is saying that IPAFs, which is the UK equivalent of traces, has been postponed until October 21. It is coming, but it's not coming. It's not here yet. Traces is live and active right now. This would require a CHED or shed or a traces entry into Dublin and a border control post on arrival at the port of Dublin. This is what we're going, from the information that's been supplied to us, these are the documents we are going to prepare, unless you don't want us to. And if you don't want us to, you just put an X in the box where you don't want us to actually, maybe you don't want us to do the import declaration, for example. But unless you tell us, we're going to do exactly what it says here, unless you exclude it by putting an X in that section. Okay, so some quite major changes to the actual new load information. A very comprehensive screen that's telling you, details about the load, fairly easy to enter details of the load. a nice summary in the section, exactly what's going to happen with that information that you're passing to us, unless you put an X in the box. And also it's running some totals all the time. So we've got 19 packages, we've got 4 product lines, we've got a duty deferment account number if necessary, so on and so forth. So that's the new load, very different sort of layout, but we think it's much more usable because it's packing everything into one screen. Because we've got the data, we've now produced a pro forma invoice, which is exactly the same as we were doing before. The only difference was it didn't have enough lines on it before. So this one is now 99 lines long, if you so happen to want 99 lines, and also has at the base of it here a preferential origin statement if the goods qualify for preferential origin. So some people use the pro forma. Some guys in our office use it to actually key the customs entry if necessary, because it just packs the information more clearly. Which led me to create this document, really, which is a summary of everything in a very usable format. So if you just wanted a print, if you like, of what you've provided to the RPA, then this is a summary of everything without wasting all of your ink, really. I see that doesn't fit very well, but I'll change that. But everything you've entered is summarized in this sheet here. The other extension that we put onto here is from the center section, this bit here, we're telling you what we're going to do based on the information you've provided over here. What this then does is provide basically invoicing information. So our invoice would be raised to you as our client. We've got your job reference, the export invoice number, the vehicle details, and the routing. And then over on this side, which is still in test at the moment, but we're trying to make things as user-friendly as we can, that these are the elements that you will receive an invoice from us. So you would receive an invoice for an export declaration, an import declaration, a safety and security declaration, traces, for example, border control post fees. We don't know what they are until it's passed through the border control post, and therefore they will be passed to you later on. But we're at least flagging that they are payable. And also there's a charge for GVMS and PBN, for example. So it's also giving you a heads up of what charges to expect based on what has been done there. So some quite comprehensive changes to what we've done. Really, this screen is just loaded with information now. And it also has lots of trips and triggers in it, lots of helpful advice, such as these screens, and also, of course, these parts which pop up every time without particularly getting in the way. We can turn them off if necessary, if people find them a bit distracting. But on the whole, they always appear below the cell. They don't cover the cell that you want to work with, and they do become quite useful. Now, that's the RPA. That's the update to the RPA. This is, as I said before, this is the logistics version. Let's just flip to the trader version. Because they are very, very similar. There's still the profile, the NINOR, the new load, and the pro forma invoice. The bit in the middle is the different bit, where the trader gets the option to actually preload their products. So profile and everything is the same. New load is the same sort of screen layout. The only difference here is that you would actually preload your library of products. So we'll put in here test 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll put the commodity code for test 1, 2, 3, 4, which, for sake of argument, we use 0809 301000. That's a good commodity code because the tick has appeared. The country of origin for that product is always GB, and we can put GB. If it requires a MOSIN code, it would have lit up at this point so that we know you can store that. And because this is a product that's potentially in the organic range, within the library here of test 1, 2, 3, 4 being your product code, you can say whether or not that product code is for an organic product or not. Okay. And then again, of course, the tariff links out as before. So you now have test 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're entering a new load, bear in mind this isn't all populated, we've added a section over here. So you would choose from your existing library. So you choose test 1, 2, 3, 4, and it knows that commodity code. It knows the origin. It knows the description of goods. It knows whether they're organic, and it knows whether or not a MOSIN code is required. Okay. So it's taken out that kind of repetitive information because you may have a not fairly limited, but you may have a very standard set of products that you're crossing the channel with or crossing the border with, and therefore you might want to prepare those in advance. So this is the only difference. Otherwise, the screen, if we go to the new load screen on logistics, looks like so. The trader version is exactly the same. It's only down here we've made the differences. So the difference on the trader version is that there's an extra box over here on the left, which allows you to put the product code in. And again, the pick list will only show the ones that you've loaded. So equally, if you chose new co 1234, that knows the product over here based on anything you've entered in this section. Okay, so very useful tool for traders rather than having to keep repeating, putting in commodity codes. They can actually just use their own product codes and keep that information up to date. Again, if they're immersing codes or organics within that, you can store those in advance. Okay, so we'll flip back for a minute to the logistics version. I say again that there's a lot of data in here, and if you only require a safety and security declaration, which can happen, it's unusual, but it can happen, then there is a section here where you can click onto that. Otherwise, we hope you get some use out of this. I should draw your attention as well to the terms and conditions, which have been brought through onto the front page rather than the order form. Otherwise, we hope you'll find this useful. This is version 5. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be pretty much bouncing back anyone that isn't using version 5, because we're designing a lot of IT on the back of this, and therefore it's important to get the flows consistent. So that's the RPA. Watch this space for further updates, as they say.